Hey, everybody. I'm pleased to be able to share my second guest episode with you. For this one, I was blessed to have my good friend and highly skilled IT leader, James Jones, on the podcast. James and I have worked together for over a decade across many different companies. He's one of the most versatile and inspiring people I've ever met in my life, and it is an honor to call him my friend. James is talented in many different roles, and I first met him years ago when he was just a Scrum lead, but he's also been a technical project manager, an analyst, and an engineering manager as well. We talk about his credentials, experience, and what got him into tech in the first place. At one point in his life, James experienced a car wreck, which led to him becoming an amputee. As a result of that accident, James went on to develop a nonprofit called the QOL Group. We'll talk in depth with him about his nonprofit, and I know you'll be as inspired and impressed with James' spirit as I am. So, with that, here's our talk. All
Great
right,
job.
James, it is wonderful to see you today. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this podcast. So, um, tell us a little bit about yourself before we start talking about some of the topics for today.
Yeah, I am James Jones. Thank you for having me, Grant, on the podcast today. Getting into IT with Grant. So excited. Been listening to it. Excited to be now part of one of the cast that actually said they've been a part of your network. So I've been in IT for about 20 years, various capacities, worked in various industries, um, part of the disabled community as well, um, and just trying to make a difference as a human. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Well, there are so many different aspects of your life that we can talk about. I think so. You and I go way back, about 10 years, right? We first met
I would
at
say about
Southwest Airlines, and then we moved on to USAA and then to Salesforce. So our lives have collided multiple times professionally. And
correct.
I would like to say we've got a wonderful relationship and friendship that's kind of blossomed in a lot of shared experiences throughout the year. So, knowing that about Southwest Airlines when we first met there, how did you get into technology in the first place?
Uh, Kind of a detour story, right? I was went to school in the beginning going for pre-med biology, and I think me and you share this story.
Hmm.
Um, got into school pre-med, decided I really don't want to do a lot of the labs. I need to work. I need to make money. So I kind of ended up getting out of that. Went into a JUCO. Went to uh, start working at a company, an energy company, a big energy company, as a customer service rep. Started really rising through the ranks, got up real quick. Just technology was just something that drew me towards it, and was working on specials teams with a lot of professional people who had many years of experience and college as well. One of the mentors, Miss Abby, wow, shout out to Miss Abby. Working on special teams with them to build a CRM for one of the energy companies during deregulation in 2001. She came up to me one day. She said, "What are you going to school for?" I said, it's basically biology. She said, you may need to change your major and do MIS or CIS
Oh,
at the time.
wow.
And I was like, what do you, she said, just go to your counselor, check it out. And so I did, and the rest is history. I had graduated undergrad with MIS degree, Management Information Systems. And from then on, tech has been a part of my life ever since.
Yeah,
So
awesome. So that's great that she directed you in that way. What was it about MIS that really piqued your interest?
it was just at that time, how the way information was flowing. I mean, we've always had these conversations, me and my friends. I have a friend now who's in tech along with me, who's been there since a little bit before I have. Even in high school, we took a couple of tech courses. Um, but just the way that the world was changing during that time frame, and I'm not dating myself back, but but going through the different changes of technology and seeing how it was becoming more prevalent than ever, and being able to use the systems that we were building, and it just captivated me to see how what we were creating made a big difference to people who were actually using it, and that kind of drew me closer to it and fascinated me, and I've been on that track ever since. And now it's more than just the applications. Now it's more of the people sense to me, about how I'm interacting with people in IT to still have that human connection. So that's where we are with that. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I've said it before. I agree with you totally on that point. I think if you know a little bit about tech, you have a secret superpower that you can pull out and accelerate you, regardless of if you're specifically in tech or another career path. Just knowing about tech will help make you so much more effective at doing your job, regardless of industry. So that's awesome. And so after then, so you got into MIS, you got your degree, and then what did you go on to do immediately after that?
So immediately after that, I stuck with the company I was with. Um, was there, changed over to another energy industry, where I was a BA manager, uh, worked with business analysts to conduct requirements. I was vendor project manager, where I also dealt with the vendors and all that for the startup that I had moved to for the energy sector. And then from there, kind of moved on to a marketing firm where I was technical project manager for them for a while, and then went to the collegiate world for Texas Wesleyan University, where I actually got my degree from, and then just got a master's in management while I was there as the advancement services manager, trying to find an advancement services CRM, an application to where we can actually start housing more information, more up to date, going after bigger donors, all of that. So, kind of did the RFP for that, did the searches for the other companies, had them come in, do presentations, all of that. And so, me and a group of other people, not just by myself. And then from there, after I got the master's in when I did, then I moved over to where we had met, which was FWA, and worked on in.com when I first got there for a while. We worked on .com. We did the integration with AirTran into Southwest, so that was fun. And then stayed there for a little while, and then got pulled over to maintenance. And then in maintenance, worked as a scrum master, uh, doing applications for inventory, all of the great stuff that the mechanics need, all of that great things that they do for the planes to ensure that we are having the planes to be maintained and maintenance in a certain amount of time, and making sure that all these things are accounted for and not lost. So I guess I did so well to where I was voluntold to go over to aircraft ops, and then that's when I met my buddy Gret. I'll never forget. I had walked over into, if anyone on here don't remember the old offices and how it was. Maintenance was back in the hangar, and the corporate office were aircraft ops. And so I got a chance to walk across the campus, and I'm like, okay, who I'm supposed to meet with? Uh, Tech lead over there is Grant Dryden. Go over and talk to Grant. Okay, so I'm walking over blindly as I can, just as excited. And I meet you and I see you in your cubicle. This is when they have the cubicles that were
Oh yeah, I miss those.
where you had great isolation and no one could. Yeah,
I
you
know
had
I
this
could get
big
work done there.
gate. You had a square about this big where you can come in and out of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep my head around to see if anybody's in there, and there's Grant. And I introduce myself, and then Grant's like, "Hey, I'm Grant." And then immediately, in my mind, oh, this this guy is so cool. We're friends now. We're friends now. And so started talking to you, and then just met the team, and then then I had a chance to kind of meet all of the team members, and we started working on performance, weight, and balance when you all had been working on for some time now. And I was voluntold to go over there and to help to get it off the ground and just to deploy. And so went over and did some of the agile stuff. A lot of the things that we were doing in .com had not been fully utilized at Southwest at that time, amongst other departments. And so I had the chance to go over and just spread my wings. Uh, had a BA to come over with me. Started doing stand ups. Started doing project planning, project diagrams, flows, started having our leads be in some of the vendor meetings where we're talking about all this great stuff about what we're trying to do and get off the ground. Started updating the multiple managers that at the time I was reporting to, because this was multiple team effort. So performance is one, then weight and balance is another team.
Yeah, those were big
So,
efforts.
oh, and had a chance to facilitate, or at least help facilitate part of the PWB inception, and kind of get all of that information laid out and find out exactly what we can do, how to cut it up in pieces, and where do we begin, and do it all of that. So that's where it really progressed and took off as far as our friendship. And because those were some days where it took a lot of energy, a lot of self motivating and cross motivating for us. And with your attitude and being help tech lead, that was kind of where we just gelled, because we needed to push this army of humans who had the right information, just had to redirect the focus. And so that's where it was from there. And then, as you said, we worked together from there. USAA, went over there with you at USAA, and was doing the Scrum Master work over there for DevOps. And then Salesforce, as a senior software engineering manager over there for DevSecOps. So it's been quite a journey.
Hmm. Yeah,
Wasteful as it,
I didn't realize you had a CRM background like way early in your career. That's funny.
yeah,
That probably
yeah,
came in handy at Salesforce as well. So on the
yeah.
performance weight and balance stuff, those were humongous efforts, and I guess I probably didn't have perspective to appreciate just what you went from maintenance into. We called it SWIFT, Southwest Integrated Flight
Correct.
Tracking. It was the flight dispatch system of Southwest Airlines. It was really the heart of all operations.
Yeah, I say, make it plain. Let them know that without that Swift, there would be no flying of the plane. You would not be able to understand and know exactly where you're going, your drifts, the mountains, all of that. All of that was included within that Swift engine. And so
Hmm.
having to get that at precisely accurate was the main focus.
It received data from passengers, from crew, schedules, from maintenance, the
Weight and
performance
balance,
characteristics, weight and balance of the aircraft to make sure that it would be able to
luggage,
take off and
passengers,
land.
other souls. Correct.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
of those fed into Swift, and it was the orchestration tool, even to like swap aircraft between lines to keep operations moving.
Correct. We worked a lot with network operations and scheduling with crew, and just to make sure that things that we were doing were not necessarily disrupting what they were going to be releasing, and that we were all on the same page. Then became with product release manager, and started working on things like ETOPS, which people will normally know it now as Hawaii, when Southwest went to Hawaii. So I got a chance to do the inception, and people don't know what inception means. It's sort of um, a different spin on a PI planning, put it that way. So
PI
had a lot of people in
being
the room. How we do it now within the agile world, in increments. We're planning in increments. We do it quarterly. Some do. I think for us, we really didn't have a cadence back then. And so when we received projects that were just given to us, we decided to call them inceptions, because it wasn't a
Mhm,
quarterly thing that we were doing. Um, and we just decided that this is something that would be easier for us, that was handed to us from an outsourced company that we were using at the time.
mhm.
And so we would get like network teams, security team, anyone who was touching or had tentacles to the project. I would get them in the room, and we would spend a few days or a week or two, and dissect the whole project from beginning to end to have a credible plan. And that credible plan had to at least be credible enough for the executives and the directors to sign off on. If not, then that means I had to go back in and have another meeting and find out what are the trade-offs, because that would be my question to them, right? Is it quality? Is it, and so taking that approach, I always went in with what is the most valuable thing that we need. What is the MVP? What are we actually trying to do? What can we incrementally build at this point right now that would give us some leeway, and that we can dynamically build on, and that we can release out in those increments. And it turned out to be a great deal. It was uh, a great effort. We learned a lot. We learned a lot from each other, and having to, I would say, to be in that bunker uh, for those many days all together, um, and trying to have that great attitude. It sets you up for situational awareness, emotional intelligence, and all those other things to be aware of, right? Not everybody's going to come in with the same attitudes they did yesterday. There's external factors that happen. So it was very on the job training more than what school could do for you. So,
That's something I'm noticing about your story as you talk. You started out as an analyst with a degree in MIS, and you rapidly found yourself into like management and then project management, TPM, technical project management roles. You go to Southwest, you find yourself as a scrum lead or scrum master or agile coach. A lot of those terms can be used interchangeably, although I know the
right.
diehard fans.
QA, I was a
Yeah.
QA manager in .com for a
Uh-huh.
little while. I mean, it the ground floor in .com. I mean, we had more than 50 people in .com at that time, and we're talking about where the desks were these long brown tables, and no one had an assigned seat, and there were at least about maybe five big uh, contracting firms um, all at once being in that one room. Can you imagine the egos?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and the firm I was with at that time before I really got hired on was like the small firm nobody heard of, and so you had to prove your voice to be heard, which I learned, which was very counterintuitive with a
Hmm.
lot of things because if we heard people's voices when they were speaking, we could have overcome a lot of obstacles that had cost us in the long run. But
I love it.
but yeah,
Yeah.
that it yeah, MIS, and I think part of the biology of learning some of the things, taking psychology course and all of that for the pre med before I changed over, kind of helped a little bit too. Not saying that was counted out or discounted, which I'll come back to because it helps out in the later portion of me going back to school, Texas A&M University School of Law, to get a Master of Jurisprudence in Health Law Policy and Management. But yeah, it taught me a lot about managing not only the project, managing expectations, um, and basically how to collaborate with other humans in a professional, technical way.
It's funny because I think that's an underrated aspect of the job. When you're young, going through college and thinking it's all about your skills that you bring to the table, and then you get hired. And for me, at least, I did actually focus on my skills pretty hard. But when you get thrown into a room like you did there, or like I did, the egos in the Navy were also outstanding. When I worked on some of my first programs, just I would be a fly on the wall. I'm some low level engineer who's not really worth engaging with at that point in my career. And I would see the project leads talking with program managers and then Navy personnel. And you have to fight to be respected at first. And then after one or two interactions with people, you'll find we rapidly find our location in that room and with
Right,
respect to one another, who is worth
right,
respecting and who isn't, which I actually
right.
am not a fan of because as a manager and as a leader, my job is to make sure the voices who don't get heard get to talk. They
You're
have
exactly
sometimes the
right.
most wisdom that we can all benefit from hearing, but because of that social hierarchy that forms, those voices get drowned out.
I had to learn early on when I were doing those inceptions, and I did many of them for many projects, that I had to open up with no matter who's in this room, and that was my boss, their boss, whoever. No one here has there is no hierarchy in this room. Everyone here is the same. Everyone here has a voice. And I had to learn to call out to those who I could see facial expressions, but would never say anything, and just ask them, what do you think about this? And so that way they could have at least the opportunity to talk, even though they may not think that anybody wanted to hear it, or they didn't think that they had the opportunity to speak up and be heard. And so I had to go around and find out how to be fair amongst all and how to pull out those who are maybe a little bit more introverted than others and maybe some who did not feel as though they had belonged. And especially our contractors that we had working with us, I think that was felt the most. And I had to really engage with them and pull out their ideas. Um, and some of them were some of the best ones we had. And so it just showed those who were in the room that everybody here has something to contribute. It doesn't matter if you've been here for 10 years, doesn't matter if you've been here for a month. We've all come from similar backgrounds or similar studies. So um, don't discount your neighbor beside you because you don't know them. This is our chance to get to know and figure out and collaborate and join together to solve this one problem that we have, right?
Hmm. It's one of my favorite things to see as someone who has just graduated college, joined a team, and begins to learn that they know a little bit more than they thought they knew. They get comfortable in the role and talking and asking questions. Yeah, exactly. Their eyes open
The
and they
light
kind
up.
of see what they have gotten themselves into. And then you see them get excited about their job. And it's like, I just absolutely love people when going through
They
that
have a
transformation.
buy-in. I don't mean to cut you off, but they have a
Mhm.
buy-in at that point. They're like, I am helping to create something that is long lasting. Who wants to just be a fly on the wall and have no say in anything, right? When you have that buy-in, that means that you have stake in it. That means that you have some responsibility towards it and its development. So you want to do a little bit better. That's just human nature to some, right? If you have that buy-in and you're actually a part of a team, then you know that you matter. Your responsibility of being there and being alert and engaging is what's going to make this happen. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I like it when their eyes light up as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. And everyone kind of comes with a different baseline skill of emotional intelligence. I think as you're born and you grow up, you kind of develop that skill. And some people, like my daughter, she's 6 years old. She outclasses me just in how connected she is with her emotions. I had to learn how to empathize a little bit more with people. I'm very much the engineer, just facts, trying to get the work done. And as I've gone through my life and been made to feel small in a room of people,
right,
someone who
right,
looks at
right.
me like
True.
I'm inconsequential and then treats my input as inconsequential makes you feel small.
It
Having
does.
been granted those experiences in my life, I've learned how to empathize with other people, especially newer ones in their career, a lot better. So, where were you when you started out in your career? Were you always as empathetic and emotionally intelligent as you are today, or how did that develop?
It developed similar to what you just stated. I was at the deregulation of the energy company, had moved from a customer rep to special teams and those days, special projects. In those days, I mean, that was sort of like you had gotten a blessing, like, and if you're in a room with people who had already, so let me paint the picture. I'm an employee of the company and I'm coming in to help a contracting company who is helping to build the CRM for what we're needing. And because I have the expertise on the system that we have, and I can better allow them to understand where we're trying to go and how and what they're needing, meaning the people who are actually on the phone or who is working on it. So I'm coming in and I'm coming into an already made atmosphere. And they're already having their meetings, they're already doing this. And so I remember this so vividly. The one who was supervising us at the time, we would do our stand ups and like on a Friday or whatever. And this person would tell me, hey, and James may or may not be with us next week. Uh, this is what, yeah,
Wow,
yeah, saying that I may be going back to where I came from. Now, I was never told this.
classic.
Uh, I don't know, and so
Uh huh.
this was sort of like a power move or whatever. I don't know what it was, but I had to sit down with that person after about because I just thought the first time was maybe like a fluke. Okay, maybe
Hmm.
she's getting something that I didn't get. So I would go and ask, and they're like, no, no. Second time is like, okay, so now I need to go and talk. So I had to sit down with that person and ask them, you know, what is the deal that where you're having to announce this type of information to people or just say these things? And she was just like, well, this is what I just thought that was happening. I said, well, if you don't really know for sure, then let's not say anything. That doesn't necessarily boost my morale, and it doesn't necessarily give vital information that the team actually needs. So let's just leave some of this stuff, out that doesn't make any sense. Um, so I had to impart and actually speak up, and then show my assertiveness to say, hey, I'm just not going to allow just anything to happen. um, I may be the newest one to the team, but let's get this on track. And so after that, I became a part of the team permanently, uh, got my wings and all
Wow.
that. And the person was had a mindset change. And then that's when I kind of understood and knew that this isn't really any different than high school, or
Hmm.
the I wouldn't necessarily call it bullying, but there are certain cerebral tactics that people will try to play with you and will try to throw you off your game if you allow them to either discourage you from doing what you are there to do for whatever reason. I mean, and in their minds, they may think that it is something that is uh, gentle, non-toxic, and thinking that, hey, this is information I think I need to say. Um, but I kind of got that early on, and then from there, I kind of knew that emotional intelligence and situational awareness are two of the most main things that are needed within the technical arena, because a lot of times we were taught that developers just like to have their heads down to their desk, dark room, and just code. And so that automatically seemed as if developers don't have a voice. Now, I wasn't a developer, I was an analyst helping out the developers do their thing. But I kind of figured out that that's not necessarily true, because we're talking all the time. We're having these conversations with what's going on with this specification, blah, 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 testing these things. I'm telling them that this button here, blah, blah, blah. And so that became my motivation to kind of take that with me wherever I would go. I need to understand the lay of the land and exactly how to figure out what we're thinking, what motivates us, and how do we continue to keep going and not have it toxic, if at all. How can we start encouraging people and not deflect them from being a part of a circle or a team or whatever we want to call them? And that's kind of how it just took off from my
Hmm.
own experiences of being the person that was subjected to, um, you're not going to be here next week. Even to the points where I was at SWA, one of the consultants came up to me and said, "Who hired you? Or are you won't
Yeah.
be here more than a week?" And that same person, I ended up taking over his job and was doing. He had to end up training me before he left, and so it's just those types of raw material that give you the ammunition you need and the energy you need to keep going, because you want to fight the good battle. Work shouldn't
Hmm.
have to be toxic.
Yeah, that's poetic justice for you there. Where the guy who tells you you're going to be gone soon, you take his job from him because he's not up to par.
Well, and he had to move on to somewhere else different.
Hmm.
That's how I would say it.
Sure.
He had to move on to a different assignment. Um, that's yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you got to be real careful when you talk to people and how you talk to people, because you never know what is in line or in stake for you. So the bottom line is treat people how you want to be treated. It's that first, second grade thing that we were taught, right? It's
Hmm.
do unto others you have them do unto you. Treat people how you want to be treated, especially in business, because you never know what happens, especially if it's not your business
Hmm.
that you own, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
You would hope everybody would take that, treat others as you would want to be treated to heart, but unfortunately they don't.
But you know, companies are here to make money. We know that.
Hmm.
People who work for these companies are wanting to make the most money. We know that. And if there is no in between for certain people, then that's all that their eyes are in their minds are focused on. Is that I have to either step over this person to get there,
Hmm.
I have to crush this person in order to get that. And then it becomes a war amongst each other, which I never got.
Yeah, yeah, me
Um,
neither. It's funny because business is not a zero sum game. even though a lot of people make it out to be. Social capital is not a zero-sum game. We can all benefit from one another, and we can all have social capital, and there's an infinite amount of it that can be printed. It's like the Federal Reserve, right?
Right.
And so here I am with my People Over Profit t-shirt, right? Like I've been made fun of for wearing this. It's like, well, Grant, what do you mean? Do you not care about the profit? It's like, well, no, this is actually Southwest Airlines and Herb Kelleher's
Right.
model, right? He said if
Love
you take
her.
care of your employees, then they will take care of your customers and your
You will
company will
profit.
succeed as a result, right? So there is the value system of people over profit in action. And so, as leaders, I think that is the way that we should treat our teams, right? People on our teams,
That
we
is true.
should care for the people. And I've shared with you before that that's actually why I went into management. It's not that I learned how to be a manager, it's that I saw all the things not to do. And I just don't do those things as a manager. So much like you, I see my job is building that social capital, protecting my team, and creating an environment that isn't toxic where people can work.
Who wants to come to a job that they hate every day, or the people that they work with that they do not like, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't bode well for mental health, it doesn't bode well for team morale. It doesn't bode well for getting the best out of people, especially if they were hired to be thinkers and thought workers. It doesn't necessarily gain the company and the team uh, much return on their investment if they're just to simply breathe, take in air, and get through the day. Um, and I think that's where a lot of managers and a lot of people who are in positions, places of positions, have to really come to that mindset that we have to have an environment created to where people can be able to begin to explore that emotional intelligence side and understand we are here all together for a common purpose to help whatever situation or problem that we're having, and to continuously dynamically scale up that particular thing and to work on other stuff to help collaboration with other people within that company. And as a whole, we are pushing that together, right? I
Hmm.
think that is part of what management is supposed to do, is to, and we say, you can coin these phrases, safe environment,
Hmm.
trust environment, right? And I think those phrases have been used so much that people have just, it becomes tone deaf. But if the manager or the director or whoever, VP, if they actually believe in those terms, then that would be exactly what you would have. You would be able to have those honest, those crucial conversations when things aren't necessarily going the way they should, and you needing to change course. I think we are tied so much of our ego into what we do that we have that weakness there. That if something that I have said that we needed to do, if someone comes up against me in 2 or 3 weeks and says we may need to change course, if I'm stuck with that, meaning that I said it, so it must happen, then that could be damage beyond control.
Hmm.
We have to be able to understand that sometimes our ideas are good at that time, but there could be a better idea a day or two later that could get us or gain us more than what we have thought of,
Hmm.
and allow those things to come through and allow those things to happen. We all in each learn from each other. Hopefully, every day and every time we meet.
Hmm.
Um, it's that saying of iron sharpens iron, and that's supposed to be uh, the residual that we will receive, right? And so uh, you got to get the ego out.
Hmm.
That's one. You got to lead with vulnerability at points and times. I mean, they've got to see that you're as human as they are, or you will only get robots who say yes. And as I stated, sometimes what you state or say doesn't actually is the best logical way of going about it.
Hmm.
So those are some of the things that I see that emotional intelligence, situational awareness can actually help and benefit quickly for an organization, for a group, for a team, um, and that benefits in the long term.
Yeah, well, I love your brand of leadership there. You had mentioned earlier about a toxic toxic work environment. And I've noticed for myself, again, being a like-minded, strong voice in the room, which I appreciate about you. I love that you are assertive enough to control the situation and not get it to escalate. You can de-escalate and defuse a lot of very difficult conversations, and it's obviously partly innate, but also a very learned skill from experience in the field. I found myself having to do the same for women in the workplace. There aren't
Yes.
very many of them in tech, and so some of them that I've noticed, because they're underrepresented, have a hard time being assertive or voicing their opinion. And so I wanted to ask you, especially as a Black man in tech, your perspective here on how you've been treated may be slightly different than mine as a white guy in tech.
Right.
Uh,
Am I a
would
black guy? Am I? Yeah. People may only be listening to this. Hopefully, they've caught on to my voice. Sometimes there's a uniqueness in voices that do give a rise to what people's race or nationality is. But yeah, being a black guy in tech has been interesting, right? Uh, it has gone from what I've just explained to you before to where people are expecting you to be gone. If you even if you're doing a good job, your presence. Uh, and I say this phrase now, right? Sometimes, and not in trying to be any religious factor. I know I keep, but sometimes your spirit irritates people's demons.
Mhm.
Sometimes when your presence can irritate someone's inabilities without you even knowing it. You could be saying things that, for the most part, some people and even some of your higher ups may not understand and feel as though you may be coming after them or maybe saying something that, but you have no idea what their mindset is. You're only there to do what you are called to do. And so many of those instances have been to where I have sat in meetings with the VP and read out reports and have noticed and have asked my colleagues to notice that every time that it's my turn, that this particular VP turns around and just looks at this painting. True story.
Mhm.
And I never could understand. But then I got it. Ah, what I'm saying really doesn't matter. But okay. But there's the rest of the people at the table who do need this information. So I'm going to continue to keep going. Um, that's part of the mindset that many people, many minorities, not only just black, but
Mhm.
um, minorities of color, uh, gender, even disability, have to actually take into account that if you are here on purpose and if you're serving your purpose, then no matter what anyone else does externally does not stop you from doing what you know or how or what you know how to do. So I've had many of those experiences and they have taught me a lot. And that's how I am able to lead with the emotional intelligence and have situational awareness quicker over the 20 years that I have been in this business and always want to look out for those who are voiceless, as you stated before, and not necessarily call them out, but just ask them questions about what do you think about this, or how do you feel, or what are your thoughts on this? And sometimes I'll do that when it's just um, a closed session between me and that person, or if I feel that it's a complex issue and we're really needing some more input, and I can look and see that their body language is saying something different, that we need that at the moment, I'll gently, call them out and ask them. Whether or not they speak is up to them, but they have the opportunity. Um, and so a lot of us in this arena who are of non-European descent don't really have that voice.
Mhm.
Uh, and I thank you in turn for uh, everywhere your stepping stone has been. You have said, James, come over here. I got this for you. It's the allies that we have that continues to keep us in these positions that can help everyone else. So Appreciate that. Just want to throw that in there. Yeah.
Well, thank you
But
so
yes,
much. Uh, I think my experience is obviously different than yours in tech, and I have grown out of a sense of wanting the voices that don't speak as much to talk because I'm an introvert. You may not know that about me, anybody listening to this, but I was one of the voices that got steamrolled. And at some point in my career, I realized I don't have to take that. And so I learned how to assert myself more. And if you see the bookshelf behind me, I have just gobs of information back there on how to be assertive, how to control people who are narcissists, how to take like leadership in a situation and guide teams of people. It's one of my skill sets that I've learned over time. And
and
so
have crucial conversations because you
yeah.
have crucial conversations. Like we must sit down and talk about this. As painful as it is, we have to sensibly make sense of what's going. Yeah, but yeah,
hmm
I've seen you do that. That's great. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think that it's wonderful. This has been the Grant show up until just recently when I had Dustin on and now yourself. So I appreciate that there's a diversity of perspective and experiences of people working in tech. And I try, it's hard because it's just been my show to this point. It's my experience that I share on the podcast is my experience, and it's not representative of everybody in tech. And so you have opened my eyes as well to experiences that others have had
Right.
that I would never have the opportunity to experience, for better or worse. Right. And so I
Right.
appreciate hearing your voice on this podcast and you sharing a little bit about your experience in that arena as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And now it's a different experience now because it comes out to where 5 years ago, as you know, I was working with you
hmm
um, in 2018 when I ended up having instantly becoming an amputee after having a car accident. And it took me a few months to get back together. I mean, I almost died. Femoral artery
hmm
severed, all this great stuff. I'm a right leg above the knee amputee, and now wear a prosthetic, uh, and sometimes in a wheelchair. And so that took my mind to a whole new level of understanding the accessibility and the disability, the community in general, meaning out in the world, and now especially in the workforce itself. Um, and so that has been a bigger part of where my mission is going towards, right? And so it has been an eye opener to see more companies are leaning towards accessibility for workers who may be neurodivergent, um, who may need uh, things to be scripted in written form as meetings because they may have ADHD or PTSD and all these things, or just ergonomic chairs or accessibility in their home if they're remote or in the workspace, especially given COVID with long haul COVID and all those things that people have presented themselves after of 2019 and getting back into the workforce. There's a lot of things that are still needed. We still have so far to go, but that's part of my mission now in the workforce. And the reason why I went back to school and just graduated in December of 2022 with a master's of jurisprudence in health law, policy, and management. And the reason why I started the QOL Group, quality of life. So that way people can have the quality of life they need, even though they may have some circumstances um, that may have curtailed uh, their original mission that they had. Just may have to put an addendum to it. Or people who were born with the disabilities, right? I mean, so, and a lot of that goes unspoken in the workplace. Um, you know, you hardly see it's sort of as if there is and not saying that there is, but just in my mind, when I thought about it, it's sort of like a different lunchroom for those who are disabled. Like you don't see them hardly ever in the workplace coming out. And I want to change that mindset, right? It's sort of like there shouldn't be eating at your desk by yourself. You should be able to be amongst your peers and have an equal voice amongst everything else that is happening and actually advocate for yourself because few people will for you. And that's probably the most advantageous thing that I'm trying to work on right now
Well,
in
I
this sector of
love
life.
it. Your heart shines through in everything that you do. You are one of the most inspirational people I have ever met in my life. As you said,
I'll
this
pay you
is the
later.
James I
I'll pay
know.
you. Thank you, Grant. I'll pay you later.
You go through a car wreck and become an amputee, and you decide to start a nonprofit to help amputees. Like, you
Correct.
are amazing. You have
Correct.
an infinite amount of energy and a heart for people, and I love that about you.
You know, I laid there on the gravel waiting for the ambulance to come, and I could see that my right leg was over my shoulder like this. And the only thing I could say, I wasn't in any pain. The only thing I could say was that, okay, now I understand. And that was to uh, a prayer that I had been asking to be answered uh, from God. And so when that happened, that's exactly what the answer was. Okay, so get ready. Um, and it was just, uh, as a servant leader, which if you are in leadership, that should be your main goal and focus. But as a servant leader, I just wanted to be that also to the disabled, uh, differently abled, however you want to name or call yourself, and just to help remove their boulders and bring water to them as well, right? Committing to rejuvenating and making an impact and a desirable quality of life for them. Many people don't have the necessary medical equipment, and that's part of what QOL does, is that we actually just give it for free, and that's QOL Group.net. And what we do, we just ask people if they're having these sort of needs, a rollator, a wheelchair, um, a shower chair, a cane. So many times the insurance companies will reject those types of requests. And we're talking about these items could be anywhere from $30 to $100 to $200. Um, and all contributions are welcomed also at this website,
Good. I was going to ask.
QOLgroup.net. Yeah, please contribute because right now it's financed solely on me, and I am needing as much help as I can because the community is in much need of it. We have given away um, at least about 10 rollators within the last couple of months, shower chairs, a lot of things that we get that I'm having to buy. But you can contribute, go to the website. It's there. You get an acknowledgement letter. It's a 501c3 certified. Put it as a tax on your taxes. But yeah, and it's just making sure that the people who are in need get it so we can counteract going down a difficult cycle of depression, uh, suicide, and all of that, where we can have some kind of quality of life where people can actually be independent, uh, if it's just for 10 to 15 minutes. Being able to get into the shower by themselves, being in the shower chair, being able to have a rollator to walk around and to sit when they need to, uh, having a wheelchair so they can get around by themselves and actually be able to go outside and do the things that they need, fresh air. Um, and so that's kind of what the mission truly is, and making that impact. And for long term, wanting to make sure that it's not only just the communities that we have here, but making it nationally and making it international if we can, and helping people around the world. Because as the CDC.gov says right now, I think it's the 2020 census was that 1 in 4 U.S. adults live with a disability, and the most common disability type of 1 in 7 is mobility, and we can only expect that to increase. Um, and I'm as I'm saying it, I want to know the words out that I'm going to say, but given the fact that we have so many toxic spills, so many things that are happening around just in the U.S. right now, uh, I could imagine that number for the next census would be astronomical. I think
Hmm.
that everyone that we know will be touched by some sort of disability. Whether you could see it visibly, like you can on me with a prosthetic leg, when that leg is missing, or you can't, where it's something that is mental or lung related, or something that has to do with internally. And so we're trying to help that good fight and get people to actually have a quality of life, even though that they may not have the life that they once had before. You can still do the things that you would like to do, and we're just trying to help them along that road and that mission, um, and that's where we are.
Awesome. Well, I love that mission. The you had mentioned that people can donate on your website, QOLgroup.net. I wanted to ask, is that the best way that people could support your mission, or are you also open to materials donation or people who
They
would like to
can,
volunteer, or
yeah.
even people
Um,
who would want to coordinate fundraisers with you?
I am open for it all. I have been in search uh, of some partnerships. We are gaining some partnerships throughout. But these partnerships that we're having are people who are absolutely into the same thick of it as we are, right? They're helping people who are in need as well. So we can't necessarily give to each other. We can help each other, but we're helping the same sort of people. I'll give you a shout out to One Safe Place with Michelle Morgan as being EVP, Executive Vice President. We went to get our masters together, my first masters at Texas Western University. Shout out to Texas West. Um, and so she's over there at One Safe Place, domestic violence community. And I went in to talk to her just about when I was getting QOL up. And she was like, oh, we need that over here. It didn't dawn on me that domestic violence abusers actually do need, uh, wheelchairs, canes,
Mm.
crutches, because they are coming in with broken bones and all of that.
Wow.
And so, helping the same community, uh, trying to get those partnerships. If we can get individual contributors to help, that would be awesome. In any way that you want to help, you can. Um, and we have a free flowing form text that when you sign up or do anything, you can be able to put your information in, and I'll be able to get in contact with you and figure out how we can work that out.
Awesome.
But
Well,
yeah,
thank you so much for sharing that with us all. I guess networking with other nonprofits is useful in expanding your network and knowledge of QOL Group. Just like networking with one's career helps broaden
correct.
your opportunity and ability to do the job, right? So, let's see here. I wanted to ask you a question about your car wreck. How did that experience change your job?
It it changed my job factor because being able to put on a prosthetic, thank God that I had the insurance to get it. Thank God that I was working at the time and was able to get the necessities that I needed. Uh, Going through the disability challenges that I were not aware of, had never faced, and was never told that sometimes your remaining stump, your leg, um, could easily bruise, which is difficult for you to put your leg on, which is difficult for you then to go and be at your job um, every day as if you're needing to come in. Um, Being in a wheelchair, getting your wheelchair in and out of your car, just to make it to work, those days could be difficult as well. So it was a mental challenge just before you even get to work to understand the difficulties in the process of just getting there. It's more than just rushing out the house, grabbing your car keys, getting into the car, and hitting traffic and saying, that's the rough part. It's even before you get out your house.
Hmm.
Luckily, I had um, an empathetic leader who stated, you don't have to go anywhere or stop this. We can get you to work remote from home, and we'll give you that, and you can do that. And that changed my life dramatically. I was able to then process all of what I needed to, and was able to be on meetings and all that every day when needed. Did my job as assigned. Um, it it in the disability world, you're not only dealing with the disability of um, whatever body ailment you're dealing with, it's also a mental game. It's more mental than I would say anything else, because you're you are trying to get that confidence up within yourself to say that you are more than just your body. You still have a voice. It matters. You are just as equally competent as anyone else, even though people may not see you as that. Um, and you're dealing with other things that people may not necessarily see, right? So if you're going out to the store or anything, people tend to look and see you as something very different. Uh, Kids want to come by and see your leg, but the parents are, shushing them away. And we're like, no, this could be the future prosthetician, the prosthetic person. Let this, kid come over and take a look at the leg, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, let's normalize this so that way when people are out, um, we're not being looked at or just gawked at. There's been so many vacations that me and my family have taken after this incident that I could tell you on. I can only count one or two people I have seen in my position. Don't know about anything else as far as disability inwardly, but that I can see the outside disability that I have seen on the beach or, um, in just on vacations. Uh, and I'm asking myself, like, where are y'all at? Like, where are where are disabled people at? Um, but I just come to find out that they're going to like where the disabled communities go to. There's like a platform and you could vacation and do all that.
Hmm.
I want to do what I'm normal, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So we just want to normalize that and but yeah, having that piece of knowing for your job that you are secured and that you have the things that you are needing in order to be successful and set up for success, then that can alleviate a lot more of those pain points that are extra layers on top of the job that you have to do and perform, and to getting there and assess and do all those other things that your mind is needing to do. And so that has changed dramatically. But like I said, having allies and people who understand that
Mm-hmm.
um, you can do it. It's just different circumstances. It can be done.
Yeah. So I think one of my favorite memories, not just so we've got the amputee, the disability side of the house, right? But for leaders who are managing teams with people of all different types of backgrounds, I think one of my favorite experiences as a manager was back when we would ask the team to say, "Hey, what do you want to do for this quarterly outing, this team event?" Right? And I think considering everybody's input is very important for a leader to do, but I have taken a team out to go get manicures and pedicures before because we always did what the guys wanted to do
What to
as
do.
team outings.
Right.
But we had a girl on the team who had just, I think she jokingly suggested to go get manis and petties. And I'm like, all right, let's do that. And I think being an advocate for different experiences and
Yes.
keeping in mind what everybody's interests are or limitations are is a
Right.
key point of being a good leader.
Definitely. And it's an outing. It's not eternity, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's one outing that we're having. This one outing doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing mani and petties every time we're going for an outing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can change it up. We can adjust. We can do things. We're flexible. We're agile. Let's try something new. Let's do something that, somebody else who doesn't have a voice gets a chance to actually do as well, right? So you absolutely said it right there. And making sure that everyone is included. And the voices that I'm hearing now about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and somehow maybe stripping those words out of so many things,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I'm hoping that the light force is greater than the dark force. And so
Mm-hmm.
that will always be, hopefully, it was beginning to be on the forefront. I'm hoping that it will continue to be, because some of the greatest minds are those that doesn't necessarily look or walk as society would say as normal. And there's many people who can prove that, um, who have come, who are geniuses in their own right, and was stuck in a wheelchair. Stephen Hawking,
Yeah.
there, you can't just look at a person and say what they're worth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yes,
times I think times are changing. I have hope that the side of good will win. Just based on my TikTok feed, I've seen some comedians on there with cerebral palsy who will
yes,
use their iPhone to help say their comedy routine
they
for
do.
them, and it's just they're normal people with that one limitation in their lives. And so I can see what you're saying about people treating one another different just because maybe they look or act a little different than others, and that just being one aspect of them as a human being. So I think this is another proponent why I'm a huge work from home fan. I think that if you can't manage your team when they work from home, you're probably a bad manager.
Right, yeah,
Just
right. I mean, we're hiring people for their minds, right? I could see if we were doing construction, but for technology, it's all about what you know. And you know that from wherever position you are within the universe. So wherever you are, as long as you're making the meetings and you're coming to where we need you to be as far as with the technology that we're using, since we are in technology, you can do that from basically anywhere.
hmm
I'm a strong component of that as well, because not everybody can muster up and get up. There are so many things that go along with being disabled. I'm speaking from personal experience.
hmm
You can have phantom limb pain, which is one of the worst things that you can imagine. For me personally, is all I can
hmm
speak on. And it comes out of nowhere and it ends at any given time. It could
Wow.
last for as long as 2 hours or more, or it could be there for 5 to 10 minutes. But once it hits, and that takes a lot of, it drains a lot out of you.
hmm
There are, things that happen as a prosthetic user where your leg has to breathe. Your leg is, mind you, in a plastered cast every day, and depending on how long you wear it, for long periods of time during the day. If anybody had any broken bones and had a plaster cast, once you take that off, how your arm looked after a certain time,
Yeah.
2 or 3 months. It just, your your fleshly body wasn't meant to be put into these items, but we're having to because this is all we have as far as technology goes right now, and it doesn't necessarily fare well um, for your body. And so there's a lot of things that come with those as far as implications, that people are just not going to tell you, uh, because it's kind of personal, and it takes a certain level of vulnerability to tell your boss, hey, I can't come in because I've got this humongous whatever that's happening with my leg right now, and I can work from home, I can do all that, but me coming in, putting something on, or just driving is not necessarily going to happen at this point. And people will push themselves to the limits because they're needing a job, a, and b, they don't think that they probably won't have that empathy coming from their doctor, I mean
hmm
from their boss, maybe thinking that there's just an excuse. But that emotional intelligence, situational awareness goes a long way when dealing with um, every and anyone on your team, but also counting those special factors for people who are needing uh, probably some gentle care, and handling in their personal situations. And we always used to, we always say people come to work every day with special circumstances, regardless of you have four limbs or whatever, because you don't know what people have gone through the night before, if they've
hmm
gotten news, if they had, been up, something had happened in their family. So everybody comes in the morning with something, and you have to be on the understanding that that is a part of that process for them on that job that never goes away. There is no on and off switch to say, hey, okay,
Yeah.
turn on your morale factor and let's just get to, put all that behind you. They just heard news that their grandmother may have had a heart attack or something of that nature. And, you've got to give them that grace to say, do your best that you can today. I know you can, you'll get greater later. I've seen you do good and great, so I know what you can do. So if today you just, if you could only give what you have as far as your capacity, we're grateful for that. And know that work will be there, but keep your mind sharp. Make sure that your people have the right space and place to talk to you and be able to be vulnerable and understand that you would take that within the best consideration possible and solely talk to them about it. If you need to talk to HR, make sure you know that is who you talk to and that these are potential liable cases. If you as a leader start talking to other leaders about personal information that your employee has given you that they may not want to be shared,
Yeah.
but just take those into consideration and the same grace that you would like to be afforded and in opportune times, I would say make sure you do the same for the people who are looking for you as far as leadership.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. So I've kept John here for a little over an hour now, but I do have more questions here.
I,
I
I
wanted
am
to
I'm
ask
you.
you, this may be a good one for us to end on here. So knowing everything that you know now, your journey in tech, the life experiences you have had, and your new mission in life here that you're building with QOL Group. So what advice would you give to yourself when you were just starting out in your career, or for new people who are trying to get into IT and are listening to this podcast?
I would say that I would have looked at, and I'm talking to those who are coming up now who are probably in business school. I think you have an array of listeners, probably those who have been in business for as long as we have or more. Um, those who are trying to determine if they're wanting to switch from whatever they're doing to whatever, no matter what the field is. I would say that my advice would be to really look within to find out exactly what your true intentions are of what you're wanting to do and why. Um, because every job that you have is going to involve some level of communication with humans. And I've listened to your podcast on Chat GPT. I understand that the AI is coming and it's here and da 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 da. No matter what, as Dustin has said, the automated intelligence is telling you, you're still going to need to interact with humans. And so I would say you need to figure out what your intention and why you're doing what you're doing, because that goes a lot further than I'm doing this because this job sector has this much money, or you can make this as your career, or you can do that. Because in the blink of an eye, that could be taken away. But your connections, the amount of things that you may have done as far as your work, um, and figuring out what was that helped um, those companies accomplish, and what have you helped basically your teammates or your employees accomplish, goes a lot further. And if you are authentically you, and if you are thinking about it in a way that leaves your ego out and put your heart and mind in and wanting to achieve a common goal, that's what I would have really been focusing on. And I probably would have done a double major. The pre-med I would have stuck with and technology, given now that I need to build my own prosthetic leg. Yeah. But
Exactly.
um
Yes.
but
If
yeah.
I can interrupt you there, I wanted to mention this since you brought up Chat GPT. So you and I have bounced around ideas that we could build or do for the community with people who have lost limbs or are disabled in some manner. Since a lot of smart people listen to this podcast, is that something that you're open to as well? Collaboration with engineers or people who would like to contribute in that space somehow?
Yes, most definitely. I just went out to Hanger Clinic. Shout out to Hanger Clinic. That's my clinic. Last week, and they did um, a little bit of a study in trying to find out on me what my obstacles are. I had a prosthetician come from New Zealand. He was making his rounds, and they invited me in, and I was letting him know what some of the issues were. And sometimes people who do what they do for a long period of time think that they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as I was telling him, and just being blunt, I was like, I'm looking in this room. None of you have lost a leg. None
Yeah.
of you are amputees. So I think I'm the expert in this room.
Yeah.
I can tell you pretty much what I am needing and what all can help to alleviate a lot of the unnecessary things that go on from day to day. And so, yeah, research and development. I am looking to collaborate with anyone who has the skills, the emotional intelligence, situational awareness, and basically the collaboration and the intent to want to help um, to further this cause. I am definitely thumbs up. So
Awesome.
yeah, and
And
me
we
and
do
you,
have,
we still have things that we need to do too. Yeah.
yeah, and we've got a Slack channel set up. We could invite collaborators too,
Yes.
if anyone's interested. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and experience with us today. It was a blast talking with you. Would
I
love to have you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
No,
Would love to have you on again in the future to talk about, as obviously you've got a vast array of skills, so we could talk about all sorts of stuff. This is the one that the topic we decided for today, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us all.
thank you for having me, Grant.
I hope you enjoyed hearing that chat and learned a thing or two from James' wisdom. He really is a special person, and the world could use many more people like him in it. If you want to support QOL Group, visit the links in the podcast description or just send me an email at hello@grantdryden.com and I'd be happy to get you in contact with him. I'd also appreciate a like and a subscribe here on YouTube. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our talk, and I will see you all again next time.